Back here. I actually attended the community input meeting on in March, and I thought it was a very well conducted meeting. Thank you, Lee and staff for doing it, Andrew. And one of the comments that were captured, I think it's in the last page of your report from the community meeting, which a lot of people in the meeting were in support of, was the discrepancy between the discrepancy in the rules between attached and detached units. And a lot of folks in the audience, myself included, would have liked to see that there be more parity with regards to the rules on attached and detached units. I wasn't aware of the 14-foot height limit on any structure in the backyard, but one of the things is, my kids love being able to play in the yard. So even with the 40% coverage, if you can increase the size of your dwelling unit by going up in a second story. I have a neighbor actually who built one of those accessory units that were in, I think, 2014 or 2013, and they actually had to get a variance, and they put some living space above their garage and got a variance to go to 16, I think, and a half feet total height. So the discrepancy here is that with attached units, you can go to a second story, but the detached units at 14 feet, you're limited to one story. So I would really like to see that there is some parity between detached and attached units where you can go to a second story. That way you're not eating up as much of your backyard to achieve whatever number square footage that you're allowed to achieve, and that should still stay the same. So if you're only allowed, as Rob said, 640 or 800 square feet for the dwelling unit, if you did 400, on each floor, you're giving more yard space for the kids to play around. So I'd like to see that some more parity and some relaxation on the 14-foot height limit there.
Thank you. Debbie.
Hey there. In my neighborhood, they used to have some of the old model homes where you walked the little showroom, so they have the really long front yards. Can you build an accessory unit in the front yard? Or does it have to be built in the backyard? Because you could, in theory, fence off your front yard and have enough depth and setback, because some of those front yards are really, really huge and they don't have a lot of backyard, and you'd have to move your whole house to be able to use. You got a really big lot, but it's all in the front yard. So could you build an accessory unit? We keep talking about in the backyard. I just wonder, in theory, could they build one in the front yard? They've got those really long lots. I don't know if there's any of those
in the front yard.
Yeah,
so we'll ask that question.
I don't know if there's any of those many other places in Santa Clara, but we might want to think about it. There might be. I don't know if there are. Thanks.
Yeah, south of Forest was county, though. That's why they have the large yards. Okay, so we have that question about if your front yard is very large, open area, could you build the accessory unit in the front? Or is it even addressed in here? Lee.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Lee Butler, Planning Manager. And I'm looking for the provision right now. We do have a provision in here that states for detached accessory structures, or excuse me, accessory units, the unit must maintain at least a 5-foot greater setback from the front than the main residence. And so in certain instances, there may be a possibility that it would be in the front, but typically we want them to be subordinate, and that's one of the ways that we designed the provisions, was to have that additional 5-foot setback. There could be that odd situation where that existing dwelling actually qualifies as the second unit, and then the primary dwelling is built in the front. That would be a very odd situation, but there could be a scenario like that.
Lee, there's a particular street in Santa Clara where the units are really set back and they have huge front, deep. The house is set deep back. If this were to go and you were actually legally able to put accessory units on the front, unless all the homes, it's going to look very strange to have the homes in the front. So what kind of discretion would there be for our city in that particular situation?
So in that instance, they wouldn't be able to, if the homes themselves are set really far back, if they themselves are greater than 1,200 square feet, then they couldn't be considered as the accessory dwelling unit. And the front unit couldn't be considered an accessory dwelling unit either because it wouldn't be meeting that criteria of being set back 5 feet further.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. This is for Andrew. I wanted to ask, Senator Rakowski has been a good friend to the city of Santa Clara, and I wanted to know, has anybody reached out to him to let him know that we're, adding this to our, ordinance?
No, we have not gone through that communication to them, but we could certainly communicate to their office that we're working on. I think, the state law basically assumes that jurisdictions will do something to comply.
I think he'd probably be happy to know that we're adding to we're looking to add to our housing inventory. Thank you. That was all I had to ask.
Okay. Andrew, did you have any comments about Mr. Mayor's observation about the square footage of the accessory units being so large?
Well, I guess that I sort of addressed it to a degree in the presentation and reiterate that, I think it's our analysis that in most situations in the city, it'll be very hard to achieve that 1,200 square foot. And where it is going to be possible, the lot's large and it's ultimately, that's a judgment decision through this process, but the discussions of the Planning Commission and so forth have been accepting of that number. I heard some language about that's just too big, but I think that there's been community acceptance for that, and perhaps some of that is predicated off of our understanding of what the state law requires. But we do have an understanding that you can't construct your ordinance in a way that you've cleverly made it infeasible to ever have 1,200 square feet or something like that. It really has to be, you can show to conform to the intent of the state law that there are instances where someone will be able to build a 1,200 square foot accessory unit. And so we think we've honored that intent of the ordinance in this approach.
And then my last question, at least on this, is what's the approval process for a resident that would like to build one of these in their backyard?
So ministerial process, what that means is really building permit process, not a planning review. Someone would come in and submit plans that would go through a building permit.
At the staff level, right?
At staff level,
Okay.
we would verify they meet the setback, height, lot coverage criteria, which are objective and that's math, right? We would do that verification, and assuming that it meets that, then it would just be a question of conforming to the building code requirements and getting the building permit.
Okay.
And that is mandated as well by the state law. It said it must be a ministerial process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the council? This is a public hearing. So is there a motion to close the public hearing? Second. Motion second, close the public hearing. And that passes unanimously. Is there a motion to pass to print the ordinance? Is there any proposed changes from the council? Councilmember Davis?
Okay, I'll make the motion to accept it, but I want the words up to 1,200 feet. It doesn't have to say 1,200 feet. I mean, I think that was what we were kind of trying to figure out there.
Does it say that already?
Does it say up to the accessory unit,
What we're talking?
the verbiage? Thanks, Lee. How much longer do we have you? 3 months? Oh, 3 weeks, oh my God. Oh.
Thank you, council. The current provisions specify that a detached accessory unit may have a net floor area of not more than 1,200 square feet.
Not more than, okay. Then I will make a motion to accept staff recommendation.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Lights on the motion? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much on that. Next, we have
17B.
approval of the proposed substantial amendment to the Consolidated Plan for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Investment Partnership Act, Home Funds for program years 2015 to 2020, and the annual action plans for program years 2016 and 2017. And this is a public hearing, so it remains open. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Our home funds, we have a deadline to use them or lose them,
Right.
which should be end of July. And we couldn't find any project within the city limits, but we are allowed to collaborate with our neighbors. And in this case, we found a site where another project can be built using those home funds. So we'll be giving our share to the adjoining city. So Andrew can briefly, maybe I've taken his thunder away, but Andrew can, share with us the details of that.
Thank you.
Actually, I have to make a clarification there. There's been some updates. So as you're aware, we received money from HUD, Housing and Urban Development Department, in two categories. One is home funds, and those are the generally the more restricted and difficult to use. And we've been aware that we had this upcoming deadline and been working over the last year to find a project that we could spend those monies on, and really looked at, reached out to all the affordable housing developers that are in the area, trying to find something that would work. And these funds are problematic to use. One of the restrictions is it has to be consistent with our own plan. And if we were going to go into another jurisdiction, we would need this change. That said, in conversations yesterday with our HUD representative, we've determined that the project described here would not, in fact, meet some of the HUD criteria. So we're not actually able to use our home dollars on this project. However, we still recommend that we go ahead and modify our plan with this language so that we have that flexibility going forward to continue to if there's an opportunity. And there's some, as we look at neighboring jurisdictions, there can be benefits, and that it creates a relationship where we can then, with that project, that we can then have enhanced marketing to folks from Santa Clara. There may be opportunities where it's a loan and then the money comes back, and we have more flexibility in how we use it in the future, and so forth. And then I would just also mention that, as the council is aware, with this last budget, we've increased our TBRA, our rental assistance program, use of home dollars as part of our strategy for how to better utilize these going forward.
Okay. Are there questions from the council on this? Any questions? No? All right, it is a public hearing. I don't have any cards. Mr. Deardown, any cards? All right, any member of the public like to speak on this issue? Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
And that passes unanimously with those on the dais. All right. Is there a motion to approve staff's amended recommendation? Was that an amended recommendation?
Well, there's no project, right?
Yeah.
So are you amending this?
Yeah, the plan is still being amended.
Yeah, we're still recommending that we amend the plan.
Okay,
As
thank you.
Motion to approve
Staff's recommendation.
staff's recommendation.
Motion second, okay. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I was hoping we'd hear from Jonathan. No? Okay.
Not yet.
Good job, your item was approved. All right. Adoption of a resolution confirming the weed assessment report on the cost of weed abatement and confirming assessment for the 2017 weed abatement program, and the public hearing's open on that. City Manager?
Mayor, Chief Kelly can describe this weed abatement program.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor Gilmore, members of the council. This is the fourth step in an annual process to abate the weeds in our city, and we use a contract with the county that we've had since 1976. The county actually assesses the properties, cuts the weeds, and manages the program for us. So this is the fourth step, and then public hearing for the 73 properties identified that need weeds removed. This goes ahead and assesses their property.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, any members of the audience like to speak on this? Seeing none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion second, close public hearing. And that's unanimous from those on the dais. And is there a motion to abate the weeds?
So moved. Second.
Motion second, to abate the weeds. And that passes with those on the dais unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. All right, next we have reports for action. 18A has been continued. 18B, Patrick Henry Drive Specific Plan Area, General Plan Phase 3, authorization to proceed with issuance of a request for proposals for city-led preparation of a specific plan. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Andrew will give a presentation, but briefly, this is a 76-acre total piece of land, or if you assemble it all together, bounded by the northerly boundary of Mission College, Calabasas, Great America Parkway, and the south side of the old Yahoo site, which is now the La Echo site. So there is an interest in doing a specific plan. Also, I would like to point out that the developers who are here, Mr. Trissini is in the audience. They had proposed that they take the lead if the council approves a specific plan. However, staff's recommendation is that the city continue to take the lead on specific plans that we do. So with that, Andrew, could you describe the project, please?
Andrew, you've been busy tonight.
Well, thank
Need
you.
a glass of water, I can get it for you.
I'll do my best.
No, there's no time for that. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, as mentioned, at March 21st, we were in front of the council on a study session talking about the long-range planning program. At that time, the city council expressed an interest in moving forward potentially with a specific plan for what we're calling Patrick Henry Drive area. And we're in front of council tonight specifically asking for direction to proceed with issuance of a request for proposal to engage a consultant who would help us through the planning process, and then also just to get clarification around the city-led versus alternative process. So as described by the city manager, the site is located on the west side of Great America Parkway, north of Mission College. And you can see the outline of it there. In our general plan, as you're aware, we have 3 phases that land uses change over time. This area, plan area highlighted there on the right side of the slide, is identified in the third phase, the 20 to 23 to 2035 phase, as a residential area, focus area for residential development. So it is something that was contemplated, could be residentially developed in our general plan in the future. The question here is to move forward with that earlier than anticipated. We've described in the RFP some objectives that we would put forward for this specific plan. If prepared, placemaking, we want to make sure it's a complete neighborhood, that it's a good place to live in the future as it's considered for conversion to residential use. We typically rely on these specific plans to create a mechanism, a set of rules, so that property owners participate equally, and not one ends up bearing a disproportionate amount of the open space or other infrastructure requirements. We want to make sure that we have a feasible development plan set forward, so that the plan would support that. And we look at the impacts on the city, fiscal impacts. And in particular, I just mentioned that, we talked about the Yahoo Le'eco site to the north of this site. We know that they're continuing to look at different options for what to do with that property. And they may come in and ask for some kind of planning process. So we'll be trying to coordinate those two processes going forward. Some important components of the planning effort would be the prerequisite studies. And this council has talked about that a fair bit in the past, that our general plan identifies a number of studies that were to occur before we entered into the phase 3 residential development areas. So we want to make sure that we address those to the satisfaction of the city council as part of this process. We want to make sure that there's a good opportunity for all the different property owners, stakeholders, residents, neighbors, whoever's interested to be engaged in the process. We want to come up with a land use plan and good standards that will help us to get the kind of community neighborhood that the city's expecting to see. We're going to look at the infrastructure needs, and we're ultimately going to produce an EIR, an environmental impact report, that will support the plan's adoption, but also future development and help to streamline that. So those are some of the important components for the plan. These are some policies in our general plans that stands today. And perhaps one of the ones I want to focus on is the third one. It's here. It says allow future focus area plans to be initiated by one or more private parties who provide funding to the city for planning the entire focus area. The city may include a reimbursement program for the private parties as part of the future focus area plan. And so this is the path that staff is recommending that we follow. Per our general plan, that we do have a property owner who said they're interested and they want to initiate the process, and if council agrees, then we would go forward with that, with the intent that they can front some of the costs, other property owners would reimburse, and everyone would sort of pay per their benefit down the road. As mentioned, we did receive a proposal that's in your packet from one of the property owners in the area to sort of lead the process, and I think their concern was, just can they sort of expedite things and help the city move more quickly, and we understand that concern, but we, for some variety of reasons, which I'll kind of summarized here, we think it is important for the city to maintain sort of the lead ownership of the planning process. One is consistency with our general plan policies. Another is that as we really explore the prerequisites, we think those are citywide issues that are bigger than just this one site, and we want to make sure that we can give that the appropriate amount of attention. We found that it's helpful in terms of really getting a document that meets the city's needs if we're directly controlling that product and process. We want to have the opportunity to coordinate with the adjacent property if necessary, the Le'eco site. And we want to make sure that we really provide a level playing field for all the property owners out there, that as the city we're in a position to make sure that all of those interests are given an opportunity to participate on equal footing. So for those reasons, we're recommending that the council direct us to go forward with the initiating the specific plan process by issuing the request for proposals or RFP, and that we could be funded by the developer, but and have reimbursement through the specific plan mechanism as outlined. So with that, staff's available to answer any questions that you might have.
Andrew, in the plan area, the specific plan area, are the majority, if not all, of the property owners interested in redeveloping their properties? Are you aware? I know
I
certainly
have
the big ones.
Yeah.
The big
so there
one is.
are 4 properties that we've had some interaction with. I would say, added up, they're not quite half of the area, but they're significant, right? We have the parcel that fronts on the Great America Parkway with 4 buildings on it. They're very interested. You can see there. The red box is the KT Urban site, obviously very interested. The properties on either side of that as well have expressed interest in moving forward, and I think you'll hear from some of those folks tonight, possibly. So those are the ones we know most specifically are, thinking along the lines of if this goes forward, they would be coming forward with projects. There may be some other interest, but we haven't heard anything very definitive. In some cases, there's a fairly new data center up there. There's a commercial condo site. There could be some things that are less likely to redevelop soon.
I think it's really exciting because with this kind of landmass, especially the La Eco property, it really gives, an opportunity to really develop something really great out there. So, especially with a lot of the buy-in from a lot of the developers or the owners of property out there. Councilmember Davis?
So I guess my question is the 4 properties that are in the top left, do we know who they all are? Were they part of or interested in this? Because to me, this is pretty exciting stuff here if we're going to do it together as a specific plan. And I was just wondering, it's pretty sizable land. I think looks good to me. But I was interested in those 4 that were kind of on the side, because I know that those 2 buildings were up, and that borders right on Mission College, right? That's Mission College, isn't it?
Just to the south of the
yeah.
yellow box is Mission College. So when you say, I'm sorry, the 4 properties on the left, were you speaking
Right.
about the ones
On the
that-
top, next to
So
La
they-
Eco, yeah.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yahoo.
So have not had any conversation with those 4 property owners. They're not part of La Eco's property, but we would certainly, if the La Eco part of this becomes active, we would absolutely want to be looking at sort of comprehensively, including those 4 properties. What makes the
Okay.
most sense?
Well, I'm just thinking that maybe if we're looking at a specific plan and that is what we're doing, would you just notify these people as to what we are doing, and maybe they want to buy into this, or I'm not really sure, because I know that we need the housing, I know that we need mixed use and housing, and that's where we kind of want to put this, but, through the specific plan, are we talking to folks and letting them know what's going on?
We haven't started the process yet, so that's what we're, would be, as part of, if we get the green light tonight, we would go out, do our RFP, get our consultant, and start our outreach. So it'd be a few months away, but that's, a normal part of the specific plan process once it gets going. Now, to be clear, the specific plan as conceptualized is the part that's a focus area that doesn't include those 4 parcels or the La Eco site. La Eco site is a very large site in of itself.
It's 45 acres.
Right. They're looking at doing their own sort of master planning.
Okay.
We don't know the timing of that. We don't really control that necessarily, but it's our intent to construct a big enough umbrella for this specific plan that we can see what La Eco does. We can look at other things like these 4 industrial properties just to the west of the La Eco site and sort of look at the area comprehensively. But it's also our intent to really just focus on the part where we've identified it as a specific plan and moving that forward, not trying to do one specific plan for the whole area, but allow the La Eco piece to remain independent until we know, at this point, we don't have a certainty that they're going to do anything.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
This is a public hearing, so
I'm
we
sorry.
should probably
You're the public, huh?
listen to the public, since they've been here for a long time. I don't have any cards, Rod. Do you have any? All right, so whoever would like to speak, please come forward. There's your
You have a
card.
card now.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing us tonight. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Drew Hudasik with Saris Regis. I am a registered lobbyist, which I should inform you of. And we'll be quick. We agree with the staff-led, city-led program. We would also like to encourage you to allow concurrent processing of project-specific applications as the general plan process or EIR move along. And we'd also like you to consider flexibility with densities on project-by-project bases. And if I didn't say it before, we represent 2901 Patrick Henry Drive, which is Andrew Crabtree identified as one of the 4 properties that has expressed interest in moving forward at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another card.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Eric Morley with the Morley Brothers here this evening on behalf of the Perlman family. Both Zach and Dawn are here in the audience. I am also a registered lobbyist on behalf of the family and wanted to disclose that this evening. They have owned Parkway Plaza at 4633 Old Ironsides that is bounded by Great America Parkway, Old Ironsides, Democracy, and Patrick Henry since 1991. It totals 10 acres with 4 buildings and about 200,000 feet of office today. The Perlman family has both operated and owned that for that period of time. We've had a chance to review the staff report and concur with their recommendation that this be a city-led specific plan process, given the ownership structures there. We also, as was noted by Mr. Hudasik, we do recommend that the council allow for concurrent processing of specific applications along with the specific plan. We're in a unique position on Great America Parkway to be able to move in short order and near order to advance a lot of the housing goals and objectives that we spent much of this evening hearing about in terms of delivering both quality and affordable housing in the community. So that is very important. And then last, I would just note is the flexibility as it relates to densities. We all want to encourage both compact housing, and this is an opportunity here to create both a mixed-use, vibrant, neighborhood, but also we want to be able to implement the plan. And so having the ability to respond to market conditions as we go forward, to have some flexibility in terms of average densities versus minimum densities, we'd like to have the council and the specific plan focus on that. With that, we appreciate the council and the staff's time on this, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric. Come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. I do not have a card, but it's Mark Tersini, KT Urban. I just wanted to also reiterate that we support staff's recommendation. And we were not looking at being the front runner just to have fun being the front runner as KT Urban to push this process forward. We were looking at it as a property owner movement to allow for the expedited process as possible for a specific plan. But we will work cooperatively with staff, look forward to working with staff on this process. I would like to suggest that we are allowed to concurrently process site-specific development plans so we can actually get to the market earlier than later. And if that's the desire of the council, I would strongly encourage that. Also, just want to caution, I love the idea of studying the Lay Echo property and holdings as this Patrick Henry specific plan goes forward, but I just caution that that could cause some delay if one wants to wait around. If they don't have an idea what they want to do now, it's kind of interesting to me that they're being considered tying into the Patrick Henry. But I understand studying both sites at the same time if you can, but just don't want to slow down the process if we can avoid it. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, did you have a question of KT Urban?
All right, now I'm confused. If we're going to do an area plan for the Patrick Henry area, and then everybody comes up here and they want their own specific plan, why are we doing a site plan if everybody wants to be exempt from it? So I think we ought to decide which we're going to do, because there's no sense wasting money on doing an area-specific plan if everybody wants to be considered specifically. So doing both seems to be silly if we're going to have everybody be exempt from it. So I think we ought to decide we're either going to do a holistic plan for the whole area and get something that's cohesive, or we're going to allow everyone to be exempt from it. So I think we ought to decide which way we're going with this and really put a stake in the ground and decide which way we're going to go. The other thing is, as we're moving forward, I hope we're finally going to get something that includes an absolute economic impact outline and plan that shows how much we're losing from industrial income versus residential, so we know really, and the citizens have a chance to see what it's going to cost to change these from commercial industrial to residential. So we've not had any of those reports provided every time we do this transition. That's not been given. So I hope we finally are going to require that with every project that goes forward, because we have not been doing those. Also, we need to show the impact collectively on all of the traffic that's going to be going in there, and we still haven't done anything having to do with the traffic mitigation impact fees either. That hasn't been taken care of, since 1978 or some decades when dinosaurs were roaming the earth. That needs to be taken care of too.
Thank
It's
you.
going to have a
Thank you,
huge
Debbie.
impact. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
There's no public hearing here, I didn't think so.
Oh, sorry. I want everything to be a public hearing. Clear the lights on that.
I just wanted, I know Debbie made a motion. Debbie, would you include the concurrent processing and the flexibility with density, or is that getting too drilled down right now? Because I really want to applaud the property owners for coming together right now. I think we need to get this to market as quick as possible, and I think they're all in unison. I think we should support them in that.
Okay, well, the way I read this specific plan and the scope of what they're doing and the deliverables, that's pretty much in there. Andrew?
So the fiscal analysis and so forth is in there. I wanted to make clear that our recommendation is that we could do concurrent processing, but that we go off and we do the land use planning first. And we don't really work on individual applications until we've kind of established what the overall vision
That's
is.
what this says.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to
Okay.
make sure that was clear. I kind of skipped over that.
No,
in the
thank you
presentation.
for clarifying that, because, yeah, it doesn't make sense for us to do this if we're just going to process all the things. I mean, we have to look at, if we're going to do the plan, and I'm not by any means wanting to delay anything, but because it's such a large area, because we're looking at so many conversion projects, because we need to look at placemaking, equity, feasibility, and the economic sustainability, which I think at least Deborah asked a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
That's in the key objectives of the.
It's in the deliverables.
It's
He's
in
got
the. It's in the.
Both.
He's got it in here.
Yeah, it's the key objectives for the focus area in the specific plan. Those are all the things. There's other things we need to look at too, and I know our core services or something that's embedded in those in the focus areas, but there's also issues like Great America, which is across the street that we are expanding. They're building roller coasters next to residential developments sometimes don't do very well. We'll have to address those kinds of things. And, other things that are going on out there when you take a property and convert it. I mean, there's more things to look at. So we have to take all that into consideration as well. So I can see us doing a somewhat concurrent process, but we have to do some work first before, and we're not going to wait for LAECO or they or whoever would be owning this property or developing this property at whatever time. But at least as a city, this is like the first time in a long time we're actually proactively planning something, which is great. So I'm all in favor of it. And, as accommodating as we can be, we will be as accommodating as we can. So did you have the motion?
Yeah, I had the
Okay.
motion, but yeah, I was just saying to Dominic that, Vice Mayor, that it's in his deliverables. He's got the traffic mitigation. I mean, they're looking at everything with a specific plan. So that's why I want to recommend staff recommendation and move this forward.
All right, Councilmember O'Neill.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment that I thought the outline of the RFP was really well done. And I think that the timeline seems fairly assertive, and I think that there have been issues about our ability to staff this. But I think by I like the idea of having the staff lead the process and controlling the process, and by using a consultant that hopefully we can get this, even though I've been told not to use this word, expeditiously. I think that I'm very, I'm very pleased with what we see here, and I hope we get really great responses. So I hope that we can get something done of a high quality, but in a time frame that none of the developers will say that we're impeding them, because we do have to have all the data and the content that's described for the RFP, I think will give us a lot of the answers to the points that Ms. Bress has raised.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to just reiterate and agree with everything that my fellow council members and mayor have said here tonight. But being the fact that, I live up in that area, and I know that this is one of the last areas in Santa Clara where there's room to develop, I think this is exciting, but at the same time, glad that we're doing a specific plan to make sure we do this right, because of the fact that it's one of the last areas we have left to do some development in Santa Clara. So I look forward to working with the community as well, and just seeing where this all goes. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Caserta. Okay, so there's a motion and a second for staff recommendation with the staff-led process. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. And thank you all for staying this long. All right, next we have the declaration of the Loyalton property as surplus to the city's needs and approval of an agreement for professional services with Alex Gaston Gasquiot, DBA Far West R&C Sales Management Company, for the sale of the property. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'll briefly describe what we are proposing here, and then if you have any specific detailed questions, we have Director John Rockema who can come up. So this property is about 10,000 acres in Sierra, Lassen, and Plumas counties. And this was purchased by SVP in 1977 for $1.6 million. And at that time, the thought was that we could develop a geothermal plant, but those plans never materialized. So we are the owners of that property, but there's no possibility of any development of any sort. And it's a maintenance liability. So with that, the thought process is that we should dispose of this property. And so SVP went through an RFP process to select a broker. We received 2 proposals, and the firm of Alex Gaston Gasquiot, who are doing business as Far West R&C Sales Management. They were considered to be the best proposers, and their staff recommendation at this point to declare this property surplus and to try to sell it off within a year or so.
City Manager, I'd like to see if we could defer this for now, since we've never had a discussion about this. We never gave any direction. We have no appraisal, didn't know about the RFP process, and we've owned it for 40 years. So wondering if we could bring this back with more information as to why we would want to do this and other things. I just feel it's getting really late, and
okay. I mean, there's no urgency from that perspective.
Yeah,
we've had it for 40 years, and a month or 2 is not going to make a difference.
And cows are grazing, so
Yes.
I think the cows will be happy.
all right.
Yeah, we can defer it for now, and
Would you like?
that a motion?
Could you make one?
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I would like to make a motion to defer this for
Back to staff.
back to staff for further conversation.
so you just want to know the reasons for making it
Yeah,
surplus? A little more
since
detail?
We didn't know anything about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion second. Lights on the motion. Passes unanimously, those on the dais. All right, thank you. Approval of agreement for the performance of services with Saudi Consultants in an amount not to exceed $350,000 for the first year of the agreement, and a total not to exceed $985,000 over the 3-year term to provide protection services for Silicon Valley Power generation, transmission, and distribution systems. City Manager.
I'll request John Rockmer to come up and briefly describe what this consultant will do for us.
Thank you very much. And actually, what I'm going to do with this is refer back to something I said at the earlier study session, which was when we talk about having a fault in the electric system, we can detect this within 1/10 of a second and shut the power off. That's the specialty that this consultant has. He does the modeling for that so that we can set all of those protection systems so that they can detect problems on the system and have all of those devices coordinate. This is a licensed electrical engineering firm that has a lot of expertise, not only in our system and modeling our system, and they've done a very good job for us and in this work in the past. So.
Well, thank you for explaining that earlier to us, so we know what you're talking about.
Right.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Oh, Councilmember Davis?
Oh, motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve second. Any discussion, members of the audience? Right, lights on the motion? And that passes unanimously with those present. Okay, next, designation of one or more council members to attend the League of California Cities Annual Conference to serve as the voting delegate and up to 2 alternates, or request the city manager to appoint one or more staff members registered for the conference as a voting delegate and up to 2 alternates to represent the City of Santa Clara at the League of California Cities 2017 Annual Business Meeting. I know I'm going to be in attendance. I don't know if anybody else is.
I'd like to make a motion
Councilmember Kolstad is too?
I haven't
Okay.
decided yet.
At least 2 of us are going.
Yeah, I'm going, but I'd like to make a motion to nominate Lisa Gilmore as our delegate.
Second. That means she has
You
to
like that
stay
one?
to the end.
That means you stay to the end.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, my friends, all of you. All right.
Nice on
Any-
motion?
Anyone in the
No.
audience?
You're going,
All right.
babe, sorry.
Lights on the motion. Oh, with
Mayor-
Councilmember Kolstad as an
Yeah,
alternate.
you should also
Oh, yeah, in
appoint some
case I'm not
alternate.
able to make it.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
included
yeah,
in the
yes,
motion?
Yeah.
Thank you.
He seconded it. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. I just got a little
She's gone.
busy. Okay. Next. Keep
Next.
going. Okay.
Dame Authority.
Approval of amendment number 2 to the legal services agreement with Hanson Bridget LLP, increasing the not to exceed amount by $750,000 for continuation of legal representation in the 49ers SC Stadium Company LLC versus Santa Clara Stadium Authority arbitration, and approval of an appropriation to cover the cost. And this is for the rent reset arbitration. City,
Motion to approve.
Stadium Authority attorney.
Correct. I realize this is a big number, but they are a formidable opponent, and Hanson Bridge is doing a very good job. So
I agree.
I think this is warranted in terms of an increase to their contract.
I only had a question as to where the money was coming from the Stadium Authority. So at the appropriate time, City Attorney, can you take a closer look at that? Just to make sure it's coming from the appropriate fund.
We will look at that.
Thank you. Authority Member Davis, is that
Motion to
a motion?
approve. He's doing a good job.
Motion and a second. Members of the audience?
We have so many things going on with them. Just kind of in general, are we making any progress on any of them? I thought we were supposed to see the audit last Friday or last week or this week. Did it get lost in the mail or what happened to it? I thought we were supposed to see it already. I guess we're not going to, or do we get to see it next week, maybe? And where are we making, can we say anything about how we're doing on all the different, are you making progress? Can we say anything on how are we doing on all the 49er stuff, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The audit there was a lot of comments back, so we're probably looking, because we only have one more meeting, we're probably looking in August for the release to the public, sometime in August for that, so it's coming soon. And no comment on all the legal stuff. We can't at the moment. All right, so there's a motion. Was there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Lights on the motion? And that passes.
We
is-
needed 5 votes.
5?
Yeah, we needed
That
5. We
passes
got
with
it.
5 votes, 2 missing. Okay. Next, we have bids and proposals, award of Public Works contract 2420A for the electric utility overhead facilities master construction agreement to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Hotline Construction, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $1 million per year for a total not to exceed $3 million over the 3-year period. I just had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On that, is we had the engineer's estimate, and the 2 bids that we received were pretty high, but it said the bid did not only assumed only SVP labor costs and not other costs.
Right.
Do we
Mayor,
normally
just
not assume other costs?
A brief clarification, I mean, different departments estimate things differently. Like if you see a typical public works project.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you know, we have a database, we include every aspect of the contract in the estimate. In this case, SVP only, or their estimators only included their own labor, not the trucking and other things that are involved with it. So it's slightly apples to oranges. And they did look at, I mean, we asked them to, you know, prepare a detailed estimate. We couldn't publish that because this is the number that was floated at the time of the bid, so we had to keep this number intact.
Okay.
Otherwise, they looked at it and we were kind of in the middle of these 2 bids that we received.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions on this?
No, we just need a better job.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion to approve and award this contract?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Lights on the motion? And that passes unanimously. Those here. Okay, next, reports of member and special committees. I have a slide, I think, that you were given for my attendance at the League of California Cities Mayor and Council Members Executive Forum. And do we have that? Okay, yay. If you scroll down, yes, those are the lists of sessions. Okay, I just wrote this that I attended, but with me at the conference was Councilmember O'Neill, Councilmember Davis, Councilmember Colstead. So I can say I saw all of them for the most part, except for an hour here or there. I didn't see Councilmember Colstead, but for the most part, we were all in attendance. In fact, Councilmember Colstead and Councilmember O'Neill stayed an extra day with more sessions. This is just day one, the sessions that I attended, and you had a choice of which ones you wanted to attend, and those were the sessions I attended. And then there's the second day. Well, there were 7, yeah.
And I was with
7.
you.
And so there was some really excellent presentations, and one in which I talked about earlier from the seismologist from Southern California, really talked about how important it is that we look at our infrastructure and our systems, especially our pipes underneath the ground. If things happen like a big earthquake or other things, and how we really have to look closely on how we build to life safety standards now, but we have to even do better than that to make sure that we're ready for a lot of potential earthquakes in California. There was a lot of sessions. I'm not going to go through them because of the lateness of the hour, but I know that we learned a lot about the Voter Rights Act and other things that are currently going on in our city, and things like how social media affects public policy and strategic planning, and a very interesting, another keynote address we were listening to was Understanding the Angry Voter. I thought that was just fascinating from a gentleman from USC. So anyways, I have given my materials to the city staff for the conference, and just wanted to tell the public which sessions that we attended. I think Councilmember O'Neill wanted to say something, and Councilmember Colston. Did you want to say something? Councilmember
Yeah,
Colston?
I was just going to make.
I just, there's something I noticed, our city staff worked really hard to, remediate and fix the fountains in front of the Civic Center and in front of the Franklin Mall. They look terrific. To walk by there, you'd almost think there never had been a drought. But it's, whatever you guys did, thank you very much, because it really spruced up the city a lot.
Okay, I was going to make a few other comments about the conference.
Yes.
So one of the things, and he and Diane have already left, but one of the that made me think of Ken Kratz, because one of the points that they made, the seismologist, when she was doing an analysis of damage, and Ken's giving me some information, I think I gave it to you, Rajiv, about like the kind of like the soft buildings, the buildings that are like the lower cost apartments that are a lot over like the apartments with posts. And, you know, they did an analysis in the Northridge earthquake, how many of those buildings, that was some of the major area of collapse. And so that LA is undertaking, you know, LA County, to really look at retrofitting those buildings, as it was a major risk area. And so when she was showing those pictures, I thought, oh gosh, because I've had that conversation with Ken. So just a few things. I went to a session on city manager performance evaluations, which had city managers who are now city council members, consultants. And so they had a lot of interesting perspectives on, and I think we're making progress in our process, but a part of it was, you know, that it should be a collaborative process between the city manager and the council, and that together we need to work on setting reasonable, attainable goals, and that we work together in those evaluations. And they brought up the value of occasionally doing 360-degree evaluations, which when I was on the school board, we did, I think, twice for the superintendent, and did beyond the organization out in the community, and felt that was very valuable. One of the things, we've talked a lot about housing tonight. One of the presentations was some of the staff from the city of Santa Rosa, which I think those of us who have lived in the Bay Area all our lives think of that as just a tiny little town. Well, it's now the 5th largest city in the Bay Area, and so they went through and created this whole housing action plan. And actually, they've done a range of things, like as they're trying to really attack their housing issues. They have like a 1% vacancy rate, just like all, you know, some of the talk about renters. I think, you know, our city's becoming, and Santa Clara is a majority renter city. I think that that's largely probably going to be the pattern going forward. And so Santa Rosa is at 47% renters. So they've actually done some things like, they've put in place a couple of rent increase moratoriums, and they've now passed rent stabilization ordinances, and a number of things like that. And on the other side of it, they are also looking at how to create a rental inspection program. And so that because there's been, I think, one of the complaints that we get is that some of the landlords aren't maintaining properties very well. So that might be something we might check back in with them, see how well they did with that. And they are looking at it as, once again, to kind of ameliorate some of the issues, to creating a tenant landlord education and mediation process. We use Project Sentinel for some of that, and as well as tenant legal services and eviction defense. So there was a number of interesting ideas that they're doing. And I was also in the CVRA, the California Voting Rights Act session, and I actually was able to talk to the attorney who did most of the presenting afterwards, and kind of talked about some of our situation, and she was kind of like, woo! But one of the comments that she made, and I don't know where we are with the, you know, what, I'll be very curious. I haven't had a chance to, I've looked at some of the minutes from the charter review committees, but she did say that potentially, if we were to have a charter change election, and we don't vote for district elections, and I told her about the possibility of 2 or 3 districts, and she's like, iffy. she said that the courts could impose it on us. And I have some other thoughts I'll share offline with our city attorney.
That's not an official legal opinion.
Yeah, and the session that Councilmember Kolstad and I went to on Friday was all on finances and looking at it and the importance of having the council establish some rigorous financial policies and the relationship between what you put into your policies and how your financial rate is for your agency. And of course, there was a lot of discussion again about the pension and medical benefit issues. So that's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Oh, I need to applaud the Cultural Commission for Latin Heat on Friday night in the park. We had a lot of fun on that one. There was over 500 people there, a very diverse crowd of people, but we didn't know how to dance, so we just kind of sat there and watched and tapped our feet. But Councilmember O'Neill and the mayor and I were there, and we had a good time. But I want to thank the Cultural Commission because there were so many happy Santa Clarans there on Friday evening. So we're looking forward to more of those on Friday night. And I did attend Monterey, the little conference. It was fun. We enjoyed it. And I think the most compelling thing was the earthquake, when she did the analysis, what would happen to the state of California. Because if we're not reliant within our city, she said other people aren't going to come to save us. I mean, we're going to have to take care of ourselves. So that was very informative. And the Voter Rights Acts, we are not alone in any lawsuits. It seems that somebody has made a career out of suing cities for districting. But a lot of cities are having the same issues, so we didn't feel quite as alone. And they gave us a few options and things that we could do going forward. So that's my report.
Thank you. City Manager, do you have a report?
No, Mayor, thank you. I'll pass it.
Thank you. Report of action taken in closed session. We didn't have closed session, so we have an adjournment, and I'm going to ask Debbie to read the first adjournment for our meeting this evening.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. We are adjourning tonight in the memory of Edna Jewel Pereira. Edna was born October 12, 1922. She married her San Jose high school sweetheart at the start of World War II. She was a devoted wife and homemaker. Edna lived in the same house in Santa Clara for 63 years and was a member of the Santa Clara Women's Club. And it was my honor and privilege to have done a few things with her in that organization. She passed away on June 25th, 2017 in Medford, Oregon. She is survived by her sister Nelba, children Gary, Kim, Nikki, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and many nieces and nephews.
Thank you. The second person we're going to adjourn our council meeting in the memory of is Deborah Ann Dunham. Deborah was born on July 9th, 1948. She was a beloved wife of Ron Dunham of 51 years. She was the mother of Rod Dunham of Santa Clara, California, and Mindy Moore of Orlando, Florida. And many of you know Rod from his work in trying to redevelop our downtown Santa Clara, and he runs the site Reclaiming Our Downtown. She passed away on June 25th, 2017. She's survived by her children, Rod Dunham and Mindy Moore, sister Judy Keller, niece Heidi Moss, and nephew Heath Keller. And Teresa, you have our third one?
The last person that we'd like to adjourn in memory of is William Robert Kelly. William was born on February 17th, 1930 in Akron, Ohio, the eighth of 9 children to Charles and Leonia Kelly. He is the father of our very respected fire chief, William Bill Kelly. His compassion for people and steadfast love of family were formed in his own loving family in the early years of the Great Depression. William attended St. Martha's Catholic School, North High School, the University of Notre Dame, and he remained a lifelong champion of the Fighting Irish football team. He left the university in his junior year to enlist in the U.S. Navy during the Korean War. William's devotion to family, his sense of humor and love of all things Irish, his compassion, and the stalwart belief in the value of education stand as his legacy. He passed away on June 30th, 2017 in Santa Clara, California. He is survived by his wife of 60 years, Joanne, his daughters, Maureen and Sharon, his sons, Christopher, Bill, Don, and Paul, his grandchildren, and many nieces and nephews.
So we'd like to adjourn in all their memories, and we're sorry for your loss, Chief. Your motion?
So moved.
Second.
And that passes unanimously.
Oh, sorry.